I'm Roovaa Lijuan. I'm in my mid-30s and I'm a fifth generation Malaysian Chinese Indian. What do I work as? Well, I'm doing a lot of things, but I'll start with my full-time job. I am a senior social research officer at the Institute of Ethnic Studies, also known as KITA, which is parked under Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. It is a research university, hence this institute handles a lot of research grants. As a research officer, I am responsible of managing the funds that have been obtained either on a national level or an international level. And besides that, I will be in charge of organizing research-based activities such as conferences, seminars, workshop, or field work. And the fun part about being a research officer is that I will be able to participate as a co-researcher in researches that I manage, which also means that I will be able to write papers, academic papers, and attend conferences and come up with proceedings. Yeah, that's the fun part of being a social research officer. And apart from that, I am also a self-taught saree designer, a stylist, and a self-taught artist, where I paint and I participate in art exhibitions. I truly enjoy doing multiple things. So for me, I don't have to choose one of the careers, but I equally enjoy and give importance to all three different things that I've been doing all this while. So, what does a day look like for me? Since being a social research officer is a full-time job, so I'm required to be at office from 9 to 5, and the rest of the time I plan out so that I have enough time to manage my sari business page, to design new saris, to come up with new concepts for photo shoots, and also whenever I get the inspiration to paint or I get the mood to paint, then yes, I'll start painting. So basically, it will look like a lot, to be handled in a day, but so far I have been handling it pretty well. I think it all depends on how I manage my time. So I completed my bachelor's degree in the National University of Malaysia, and I went on to work for about a year or two. And later on, I decided to further my studies with master's degree. And my advice to young girls would be set education as a priority in your life. Gone are the days where education was seen as a means of qualification to get a job. But in today's world, education is more than just a means of getting a job, because education broadens your knowledge and it gives you a very vast perspective about life. It gives you options in your life. I mean, you can go far with education, that I can assure you. And with education, you are free to make decisions in your life. You're not depending on anybody, and I think that is the most important thing when it comes to education. So set it as your priority, pursue your education, and you'll never go wrong with education. It is definitely an important self-investment towards developing yourself. It is safe to say that the education sector is being slowly dominated by more female members compared to the male members, and it is something very refreshing to see. And I'm fortunate enough to have not faced any gender-based discriminations so far, but it doesn't mean that I have not come across such scenarios among my peers. There was this incident where my friend, she was very well qualified for this position, and she applied for the deserving promotion, and she had to attend an interview, and interview with obviously superiors who um, are mostly male. They commented saying that how unfortunate, you are well qualified, you are very determined, but you are married, you have a family to look after, and you have a children, and therefore you won't be able to carry out most of the tasks, such as traveling out of the state or the country to attend seminars, conferences, and such was the situation, and they gave out the position to a male counterpart who was less deserving because of the qualification. I'm talking based on merits, right? So these qualifications are measured by looking at the merits. And in this case, how sad it is that a well-deserving candidate lost that position to someone who is less qualified just because of the gender differences. So to be a woman in this particular field, you have to stand out. You have to stand out in your merits. You have to stand out in all your activities, all your performances, and on top of that, you have to be able to stand up for yourself when you are being discriminated in such situations. Well, I think the toughest part of being a woman in this chosen field of work would be, as a woman, you will have to continuously prove yourself and your credibility among your male peers or your superiors, so that you really stand out. Otherwise, you will miss out on so many other things. But I don't think this is the case when it comes to the male members of the sector, because even though the education sector is purely based on accreditation and merits of your publications, the number of research, the number of supervisions, but there is another factor, that external factor, that really determines where you go in your field of work. And therefore, I feel that it is very tiring to be continuously proving yourself to people, especially to your superiors, that you are worthy and you are well deserving and you are well qualified in whatever that you've been doing. And there are two group of people. One that only see me as a saree designer and stylist, and there is another group that only know me through my full-time job. So it is very, very interesting to see how they react when they get to know that I actually do a lot more than my full-time job or my saree styling. So I think I'm definitely breaking a lot of norms here, because it is ideal for a woman to have a full-time job, especially a government job, and to settle down with only that. But in my case, I have a full-time job with the government, but I also seriously pursue in my interests in fashion and art. So yeah, I think it is also a set of stereotypical or prejudices set on women in general. If you ask me if the society has supported me, yes. A majority of the society have always been very supportive of what I've been doing. In earlier days, people would actually discourage me to continue managing all three at the same time. Many would actually suggest me to quit either one of the things that I was doing. Most of them will be saying that it's just a hobby, just live it. You don't really have to run the business or make any more art. But they always encouraged me to keep the full time job. I think it is only coming from that fear and that uncertainty that our society has always been living on. I mean, it has been the norm, right? To live by the books, to live by the norms, but suddenly here I am. I'm telling people that it is okay to have more than one job or more than one interest that we pursue seriously. The one person who have absolutely inspired me to be in this career path would be my mother. As a single parent, she was working for a research company as a panel liaison. So I was exposed to research activities at a very young age, especially when my mom goes to the field work, collecting data, analyzing it, and those things looked so cool to me. And also the fact that having a job as a single parent meant survival. And with that job that she had, she gave me education and everything that I needed as a child, and therefore I had this enormous respect and enormous um, inspiration towards working hard to get what I want. And she also taught me that education is important to secure a good job, but education is also important to develop yourself in every other area. It is not only as a mean of making money for survival, but it is also important to meet people, build networks, and broaden your perspective on life. So it's definitely my mother who have inspired me to be in this research field. If you look at my designing life, my art and design, I would definitely say I got it from my mother as well. Like I said before, she did not look at life only as a mean of survival, but she also taught me this important point that life has to be lived, holistically. It's not just job, it's not just about making money, it is not just about living a good life financially, but it is also very important to live a life that is very fulfilling. What is fulfilling about my job is that these three different things that I'm doing right now in my life are all interconnected, and they somehow complement each other. The job that I have at this research institute does studies on ethnic relations, about ethnic differences, similarities, and I learned so much about people, right? So these knowledge help me to better understand and convey these messages and points and values into my designing or my journey of art. And therefore, I think it's really fulfilling. It is not something that I've been doing very differently from one another. So yeah, it's really fulfilling that they are interconnected, and therefore it helps me in a lot of ways. Speaking of change, I think the biggest change that I would like to see is the change in ourselves as women. We need to get so good at what we are doing that we are confident enough to stand up for what we deserve. Because based on my experience, I have seen qualified female professors pushing away positions or opportunities that they deserve simply because they lack confidence and self esteem. Often enough, they would push away the positions to the male counterparts, and that is absolutely sad. And for that, I believe that the change has to come from us. Like I said, we have to be so good at what we're doing that the industry or the field cannot ignore our existence, but to include us in everything that they're doing. An ideal world would be a world free from all kind of judgments, because as we all know, society has already set up many unhealthy presumptions about women in general and their potential and their capabilities. And so a world free from judgment will allow women, to be who they are at their best, freely and independently. And I think that is one change that we need in this world. And my simple advice to fellow women and girls would be that keep learning, keep upgrading yourself, so that you get so good at what you're doing. Because honestly, nothing is more empowering and uplifting to see a fellow woman who is so good at what she's doing.